Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to Decisions Lunch and Learn. My name is Matt. I'm going to be the host for today. And if this is your first time joining, our daily Lunch and Learn is hosted Monday through Thursday at noon. And this is a place for you to be able to come and ask any kind of questions you've got, and I will do my best to respond to those questions. If you do have a question, you can use either the Zoom chat function to type out your question and ask, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question that way. So if there are any questions, feel free to do one of those two things and I will do everything I can to respond. There are no questions coming in currently, so I'm just going to wait a few moments and give everybody a chance to either type out or raise their hand. If there are no questions that come in for a few minutes, at that point, I'm going to start doing a little bit of a, I guess you could call it a demonstration. So I'm going to wait here just a few moments. If you're just joining in, there are currently no questions. So if you have any, feel free to ask. I am waiting on questions to come in. If I don't see any questions come in, like I said, I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration. But I do want to allow, enough time for anyone to type out their question or raise their hand if you do have. All right, we're about 5 minutes past noon. No current questions. I'm going to start this. I keep on calling it a demonstration. I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but I'm going to start doing that. And if any questions come up, or if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt what I'm doing. And I will stop what I'm doing and I'll respond to your question. A few, I guess, months ago now, I started building out a calculator project on a previous Lunch and Learn. And essentially my idea is, it used to be that one of our first training exercises as employees were being onboarded was that they would use decisions to build a calculator. And typically it was a very basic fundamental calculator that you would type out your numbers, and you would even probably type out the plus sign, and decisions would then calculate, what the value, the output value would be. But I wanted to take another stab at that, rebuild the calculator from when I first started, but build it out in a way that it had the same UI as a calculator that I used back in elementary school. One of those blue plastic calculators with a cover, 4-function simple calculator. I wanted to build that out from scratch with very little planning, so you all could see what it looks like. For someone who is familiar with decisions, building out something that maybe from the start haven't really done a whole lot of planning on, so you could see what kinds of ways that I'm approaching the problem and how it looks to build something from scratch. I've only spent one other Lunch and Learn doing this, so I didn't have a whole lot of progress, but I did start on the form, and this was the general layout I had. I wanted to have buttons that you could click that would raise events to populate the screen with whatever number that you pressed or operation that you're trying to do. So the first thing I was doing was essentially prototyping, how that function would work. I wanted to be able to click this one button and a 1 would appear in the display. So I built out that form that you were just seeing, and I built on the flow that was responsible for putting the number 1 on the screen. I think last time I might have had to have fudged it. I ran out of time, so I ended up doing it in a very simple way that I'm going to have to update here. I used an active form flow for the button to put the 1 in the screen. I'm going to edit that active form flow now. And this is what it was doing. It's just a set control value step to put the number 1 on the screen. Just for my own memory, I'm gonna run the calculator so I can see how it's currently behaving before I start doing any more work. Okay, so if I hit 1, the 1 does display, and that's a good start. If I hit it again, though, there's no, it doesn't add another 1, which is what I would expect it to do. So that was where I had to fudge it a little bit. Let me start there today and have it so that when I click the next one, it doesn't just replace the 1 with a new 1, it's going to append it to whatever's in the calculator currently. So to do that, first of all, this step here, this is setting it to a constant value of 1. What I need to do is have this replace, not replace the 1, but append it. I had started building a subflow for that, and that was this display 1 on screen flow. And this was doing the concatenation. So take the current screen and add a 1. I'm going to attempt to use the subflow again as a part of my active form flow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it's going to take in current screen so it can append anything new. I'm going to modify this so it can take in a value to add to the screen. So now instead of just always adding a 1, I'm going to make it so that I can take the current screen and then add anything else, whatever the input to this subflow is. That'll make this subflow a lot more reusable. I could use this for every active form flow that is adding something to that screen. With that, I'm going to rename it. I'm just going to call it Update Calculator Screen. All right, so back on my form. Actually, this is already the rule flow for the number 1 button. I'm going to just put the subflow in here. It's called Update Calculator Screen. I will still need the set control value step because this is responsible for actually changing the value of the screen on the form. This subflow, its purpose is just to decide what that update should be. All right, so current screen, that's going to be coming from the flow data. And I called that control calculator screen, so that's good. And okay, I'm looking for value. Oh, that's the grid layout. Okay. Calculator screen text box, that's what I'm looking for. So the current value of the screen is going to come in. This subflow, this rule flow on the form is always going to be adding the number 1 because this is only going to run when I click that 1 button. So to add, it's always going to be 1. All right. And then the set control value, instead of a constant 1, I'm going to do select from flow. And the updated screen, which is the output of the subflow, is what I want what I want the screen to be updated to, of course. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to go test it. I want to see if that change actually, or if that's actually working. Oh, oops, wrong one. So I have a flow that just has this form in it, so I can test the form as I'm building it. I'm going to run it in the debugger just to get some insight as to what's happening in the back end. I'm going to click the 1. Great, I have a 1 showing up. That's what I would expect. Now when I click it again, it should say 11. Excellent. Okay, so that is working as I would hope. If you're just tuning in now, by the way, I'm just doing a little bit of a build out from scratch. I'm trying to build a calculator. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me by either typing in the chat your question or raising your hand, and I'll pause this to address whatever your question is. But otherwise, I'm going to keep moving forward. I think that the next step here, logically, is I'm going to add a 2 button to my calculator. So all of these buttons are going to be raise event buttons. I want them just simply to trigger an active form flow. So I'm going to grab an event button, put that right next to the 1. And the text here is going to be 2. This is going to be the 2 button. And I want to give it a name. I called this one 1 and then event button. I'll just give the one next to it a similar name. But that's going to be 2. All right, so just like I did for the 1 button, I created a active form flow called 1 button. And that form flow is responsible for taking care of what's supposed to happen when I click the 1 button. I'm going to do the same thing, but for 2. So I'm going to call this one 2 button. The only trigger for this is going to be when the 2 button is clicked. So I'm going to set up that trigger now. And I'm going to edit my rule flow. This is going to be the, oh, all right, good. I've been interrupted. Okay, here's a question coming in through the chat. Is there a way to build an HTML code snippet by concatenating strings? Trying to dynamically build a piece of HTML so I can pass it into the HTML to PDF step. Good question. I'm going to set it up so you are able to unmute yourself if you'd like. But the answer is yes, there is a way to do that. Let me go ahead and close this and open up another flow. Okay, 1 second here. Sabrina, can you make it so that Martin can unmute himself? I don't think I have the permissions to do that. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to take a stab at answering what I believe is your question. So essentially, if you're trying to put together HTML to be rendered in a PDF, it's the same as just merging any plain string. I will point out that you would want to avoid using the HTML merge step specifically, which sounds counterintuitive, but HTML merge injects its own HTML. So if you're typing out HTML tags in there and you merge that together, there's going to be some interference, or that HTML output from that HTML merge probably won't render as you're expecting. So you can use a plain text merge to put in your to merge your text together, or I would suggest you could also use, depending on how large of a string you're trying to create, HTML string, you may consider using a string builder step. A string builder step is a more efficient way to compile a string in a flow. And so with string builder, the way this works is you go to, we got to find where these live in the toolbox. Data, and then I believe it's in text, and then string builder. Once you create a string builder, it's going to output a thing called string builder data. And from there, you can append lines to that string. So this is a step specifically for appending HTML lines. This step takes in the output from the create string builder step, and then the new line that you're trying to add. So, some HTML. And each time this step hits, it's going to add this HTML to your string builder. Presumably, you may be in a loop. If you're trying to create an HTML table or something like that, which would require looping through the data, you would append an HTML line for each loop. And then after that, when you are finished, you'll use the close string builder step. This will take in our string builder data object. And from then you'll have a string that you can use. Martin, if you've got any further questions, or if I haven't really covered exactly what you're trying to ask. Okay. In the chat, yeah, I wish I could unmute you, but I don't have that ability. Great. Okay, looks like that is a possible solution to your question. If you have any further questions, feel free to use the chat. I'll have an eye on that, and I'll try to address that as you ask it. But yeah, by the way, if you're not looping that much, or if you're not creating that large of a string, you may find it easier just to use a plain text merge. Because it's a little bit of an easier design to use than this. I'm just going to show you what it looks like through here. Merge plain text. You can use this editor. The plain text merge, if you do HTML tags in here, it'll leave them as is, and then you can merge in existing data. But all right, no other questions coming in. I'm gonna move on back to the calculator. Until any other questions come in. All right, so I was going to set up the 2 button. I finished with 1, and now I wanted to go with the 2 button just to make sure that if I've got, it works with the 1, I want to see how these 2 form flows are going to interact with one another, if they'll work together. So opening up the form, I'm going to go back into my 2 button form flow, which I forgot to save, so I'm just going to start over. Setting up my trigger to activate this form flow once the 2 button is clicked. And this flow is going to look very similar to the 1 button. So it's going to have the update calculator screen. Got the update calculator screen subflow. So the current screen is going to be the same as before. This will be from the form data, the calculator screen, which is a text box, and the value for the current screen. To add this time is going to be the number 2. After that, it's going to be the set control value step. To actually update that text box. All right, so the form control we're updating is going to be that calculator screen text box. Once I select that, this step updates with the expected input for that type. In this case, it's just a value, and that's going to be the updated screen. I'm going to save this flow. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, 2 button rule flow. I want to update this name of the flow just to keep it a little bit organized. Okay, saving that. I'm going to save the form, and then I'm going to debug the run calculated form flow again. All right, so I'm going to click 1. That's still working, and I'm going to click 2. Excellent. Okay, now back to 1 just to give it a little bit of a test. All right, and it seems to be working as I would expect at this point. The rest of those buttons, 1 through 9 and 0, so I guess 0 through 9, would all work exactly the same way. So that I'm going to tackle another problem. First, let me pull up an image of that calculator so I can recall exactly what the button layout is and think about what the next step I want to take here is. And this is the calculator I'm talking about. We've got buttons 0 through 9, plus, multiplication, subtraction, addition, and then a big equals button. Okay. I'm going to tackle this row of buttons here. So I'm going to start with the addition sign. I want to be able to add that. I want to add that to my calculator. That's going to be another event button. Oh, actually, I think I grabbed the wrong type. All right, event button. So that's going to be my plus sign. And I'm going to add an active form flow for that. Trigger for that, of course, is going to be the plus button that I just added. And I believe this is going to be able to operate in the same way as the, actually, I'm trying to recall exactly how one of those TI 108 calculators works. I wanted this to be as similar to that as possible. I'm actually thinking it doesn't display a plus on the screen. It's simpler than that. I think what it does is once you hit plus, the current number disappears and then you start typing the number that you want to add. So this form flow is actually going to be a little bit different. Now I've got a challenge that I didn't consider when I started this. The value on the screen goes away. I need to save that somewhere so that I can actually do the addition operation on it. Because originally when I was thinking about this, I was planning on having, it would show 1 and then a plus and a 1. And then you'd hit, and all of that would display on the screen. But now that I'm thinking back to my elementary school days, those calculators didn't do that. They actually clear everything out. So now I got to consider, all right, how am I going to save what was currently entered when someone hits the plus button? Okay, let me think about that. Well, I'm going to start easy. I'm just going to put essentially like a hidden screen on this calculator. A hidden screen to store the values that the user is entering. This is going to be the display screen. And then somewhere else, I'm going to add like a hidden. Now, for now, I'm just going to add it at the bottom. Oops, okay. I keep on wanting to resize it, but I actually want to give it the name first. I'm just going to call it hidden calculation. I'm going to have it visible for now, but eventually this would become hidden. Or I may replace this with a different approach entirely, but I think this is the easiest way to get started on storing what I'm trying to add together. So what I want to have happen when I hit the plus button is the value that is in the current screen will be applied to this text box. So if I typed in 1 up here and then I hit plus, the 1 will go away, but the 1 will appear in this box with a plus next to it. All right, so I'm going to work on that. I have a feeling that particular operation is going to be happening more than once. So probably for the plus button, same thing for the minus button. So I'm going to start by building out a subflow. I know that exact procedure is going to happen in multiple cases. So I want to build a flow that can do that. I'm just going to call those operation buttons for the subflow. This one's going to take in the current screen. It's going to take in the operation. I'll call it operator. So that'll be either like plus, minus, multiply, divide. And this is going to have to output two things: updated screen and a value for this box, which I called hidden calculation. All right. Hidden calculation is going to be, oh, sorry, let me start with updated screen. That I'm going to set to just a constant blank, because when you hit an operator button, at least as far as I'm thinking right now, it just clears out the screen and you start typing your new value. So I'm going to set that to a constant, empty. Now, hidden calculation, this is going to be this is just going to merge the current screen with whatever operator was typed in. So I'm going to do I could do a plain text merge right on the end step, but I'm actually going to use a step for that. Merge to plain string. The reason I want to use a step is just so that if someone else, nobody's actually going to come in and update this, but let's say someone were, I'd want there to be a step here. So otherwise, if you open this, there'd be no steps. You'd have to know something's going on. Someone would have to click the end step to see like, oh, there's a plain text merge happening. I'm just using the step to expose that, make it really visible to someone else who might come in later. All right, so this is going to be the current screen concatenated with the operator, essentially. So I think that's all it needs to do. I'm going to update the step name, merge, merge hidden calculation. I'm going to call that output hidden calculation. And that's going to go straight out that output. Okay. That's a strange error message. Property updated screen can't be null. It's not really null, it's an empty string. If I hit ignore there, I think that is going to be the same as if I output an empty string. Okay, so I think that's all this subflow actually has to do. To put that to the test, actually first let me debug it. I like to just make sure. So let's say the screen had the number 1 in it, an operator that I just pressed was plus. The output I would expect to be 1 plus. That was pretty straightforward, but yeah, that's what it's going to be. Okay. You know what? Actually, now I'm thinking about this, it doesn't want to take the current screen and add the plus to that every time. Sometimes, if you've already hit the plus button, we wouldn't want to clear this out. We actually want to add the next. Okay, so this is going to have to be a little bit smarter. Because let's say, let me debug this again. Let's say the current screen was, yeah. At some point, I need to merge the next value that's been entered. I'm gonna have to think about that. But first, all right, I'm gonna implement this into the button, and then once I see it, I think I'll be able to think about it a little bit better. All right, so this active form flow is gonna be plus button triggered on the plus. All right, so we're gonna use that subflow I created called operation buttons. All right, so the operator, anytime this flow is running, I know it's because someone hit the plus button, so I'm gonna set that to a constant there. Current screen is always gonna be from, well, of course, the current screen text box. All right, and I'm going to use the output of this to update both the current screen and that hidden calculation text box. So I need 2 of these form rule steps. Both of them are going to be set control value. First one, I'm going to set the current screen. So form data calculator screen. And I want that to come from the output of the subflow, which is called updated screen. All right, and the next step is going to be to update that hidden calculation control. Oops. All right, and then it's going to come from form data, and I called it hidden calculation. All right, so value there is going to be hidden calculation from the output of that subflow, and done. All right, saving that. I already updated the name. I'm going to hit OK, save my form, and I'm going to run the flow. All right, so I'm going to hit 1, and then I'm going to hit plus. Okay, that's what I would expect so far. I know the next step, it's going to mess up a little bit. I do think that these buttons are going to work, but then once I hit plus again or something like that, it's not going to work. So I'm going to hit 2. Normally, if I were to hit plus on one of those calculators at this point, it would show the value 3 because it would give me the current running total. So I'm trying to think about what actually would need to happen when I hit this plus button again. I would need it to actually do the operation. I would actually have to add 1 plus 2 at that point, and it should display 3 here, and then this should have been 3. So let me think about how I'm going to do that. $11 plus, okay. When I first load this value is empty. I could check to see if this has a value, and if it does, do the math first, then output this. Okay, if it has a value, I need to do some math. All right. I had a flow that was designed to test how this math would be done. I'm pretty sure I can use this evaluate dynamic expression step for just about anything that this calculator could do. So just to test that, I'm going to put like 1 + 1. It's going to hit this evaluate dynamic expression step and output hopefully 2. Okay, not out of the subflow, but I do see the steps outputting 2. I'm going to use this subflow to do the calculations. It's going to take in a math string and it's going to output the calculated value. I'm going to update the name too because I had this called test calculation logic. I'm just going to call this do math. All right. So I need my operation button subflow to be smarter. It's going to have to be able to do math. If I'm thinking about it right, the first thing I need to do is check if the I need to check the value of that hidden calculation, which I'm not currently taking in. I'm only taking current screen and operator. So let me add that as an input. Hidden calculation. All right, if that thing is empty, is hidden calculation empty? If it's empty, we do what it was currently doing. So the true path is actually good. I'm happy with that. If it's not empty, we need to actually do something smarter. First thing we need to do is put together our math. So I'm going to use another merge step for that. Assuming there's something in there, it'd look like 1 plus or some number and then plus. At this point, I've only tackled the plus button. So I want it to take that 1 plus and append to that I think the current screen. Think about that. I actually, I'm not feeling completely confident in that. Because as soon as you hit plus, that current screen is emptied out. No, it's emptied out by this flow. So actually coming into this, it will have a value. It's going to do that math. All right. Best way to find out is just to do it and test it. The math string is going to be exactly what's output from here. Merge math. Why do I keep on typing match? Math string. Do math is actually going to take in that math string and output my calculated value. That calculated value then gets set as the current screen. So this is set to ignore, but actually I want this to be calculated value. All right, so on the output of the do math step, I want this to call this current screen. And this end step is going to take in, actually, sorry, I'm going to call this updated screen just to be consistent. I'm going to map that updated screen to the output of my math subflow. And then I'm going to handle that, that current screen output with this create data step. Oh, good. It looks like you were able to get the HTML working with the string builder. Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Good. And of course, if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm just going through this calculator because I think it's kind of fun. And I'm going to keep doing that for the next 15 minutes unless someone wants to interrupt me with a real question. But yeah, so on this path, on this true path here, the current screen needs to get a value. I always want that to be empty on this path. So I'm going to create a variable here called updated screen. It's a string. And it's always going to be empty on this path. Updated screen is going to output this. I'm going to say set screen value for the name of this step. Actually, I'll be more specific. Set screen value to empty. It's got a validation issue. I don't know if I believe that. Let me hit save. Oh, now there's two validation issues. Okay. What are they? Another step outputs updated screen, but it's a different type. I see. Okay. Yeah, this is outputting updated screen as a string. This one is outputting it as a decimal. Now, my calculator is always going to show a string, even if it is just numbers in the string. So let me update this. I want this flow to just output a string. It's calculating a decimal, but I'm going to cast that into a string with this subflow. And it should just let me select the calculated value. A decimal can be easily converted into a string. I don't actually have to do anything extra here. It's just going to happen automatically for me. So that cleared up one of the validation issues. There's still one left. Another step outputs. Okay, so that's what I just fixed, and that validation issue went away. All right, so I added an input to this, which means I have to go update my calculator form. Sorry, my form flow for the plus button. Since there's a new input, hidden calculation is going to come from the hidden calculation text box value. Okay. If I'm being honest, I don't know exactly how this is going to behave, but fortunately, I don't have to guess. I can just run it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate this tab. I suspect I'm going to be back in this flow again very shortly. So in another tab, I'm going to run the calculator. All right, 1 plus 1. All right, so far it's good. I don't have an equals button. That's the problem. Okay. But if I hit plus again, it should show 3. And it does not, and it didn't do that here either. All right, well, let me run this in the debugger and see exactly what's going on in my active form flow. All right, I'm gonna hit 1 plus 1. All right, so for the plus button, all right, it ran twice because I hit the plus button twice. First time I ran it, it was empty. So it cleared out the screen, which was good. It's still what I was expecting. The second time I ran this, hit the plus button, what happened? All right, it did go down the right path. Did my math step get the right thing? 2, it did. But I must have a mapping issue because the updated screen was null. So let me check that out. Yep, okay, so this is called math string. I need to call that updated screen. And just to confirm, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Data Explorer to make sure that that variable is being mapped out from both the create data step and the subflow. So I'm going to click on updated screen. Okay, it's coming out of there. Oh, okay. I accidentally updated the input. All right, now I'm actually going to update the output. Double check with the Data Explorer. I'm going to click on updated screen. And now it's coming out of both the subflow and my create data step into that end step. All right, let's see how this thing behaves now. I'm going to rerun this debugger. 1 plus 1. No, okay. Well, that was a little bit awkward, but it did get to 2. Let me just slow that down and see exactly what happened. All right, I hit 1. That's easy. Plus 1. Okay. At this point, if I hit plus, I should see 2 show up. I know that's not what happened because I just did it, but I want to see what happens when I do hit plus. Oh, it did. Okay, let me just hit 1 again. Oh, wait, yeah, that's awkward. So now if that, okay, this is a bit trickier than I was originally anticipating for sure. Okay. When I hit plus again, it actually, it's adding, it's appending it, but actually what it needs to do is replace. So it kind of has to know if I'm trying to replace the screen or display the current total. So just to slow that down again, hit 1, display 1, hit plus, good. And now it's asking me for what I'm trying to add. If I hit 1 and then I hit plus again, it's going to show 2. At this point, if I type a button, I think what happens on one of those calculators, maybe I need to get my hands on a TI 108 to be sure, but I think it would clear out the current screen and allow you to type something else. Like if I hit 1 or 2 right now, it should just show 1 or 2 because it knows it's showing the total and it's asking, okay, what do you want to add to that? That's going to be tricky. It's certainly possible. Not something I'm going to be able to tackle today. I might have to think on that a little bit, come back to it. But at this point, I'm feeling somewhat satisfied that I was at least able to see I can do 1 plus 1. That's a start. I'll take that. I don't have any other questions coming in through the chat. I don't see any hands raised. I appreciate anybody who's listening or joining in. I hope it was at least not terrible to listen to. So thanks for joining this Lunch and Learn. I'm going to end it here. I hope everybody has a good rest of their Thursday. And hopefully I can see you some again on a following Lunch and Learn. Thanks, everybody, and take care.